multiplied unto you from God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, to the deacon ministry, to our mothers, to our ushers, to this praise and worship team. Let me rephrase that. I apologize because I know y'all, this praise and worship ministry, amen, that ministers, amen, to be heard by song with the hopes of what King Saul experienced. King Saul was said to have had a down spirit one day. And he heard of a little musician by the name of David. And he sent for him because he heard that when David played, it was something about the music that changed the atmosphere. And the Bible records that when David did play for Saul, that the spirit that was on him was lifted. And I just believe that this praise ministry sings that way. They sing from a place knowing that the audience may not get it now, but maybe up the road, maybe life's next turn, they'll remember these words: I know who I am. My problems may call me something. Foes may label me one way. Family may put another title on me. In fact, my situation may have me so dire that it looks like I'm defeated. But praise and worship, I'm going to remember the song, be it now or down the road. Carlos, you know who you are. Amen. We thank God for him having the last say-so of my identity, of our identity. We thank God for bringing us to this place to assemble ourselves amongst each other, to edify, to build up, to strengthen, and to send back out. I want to call your attention to the 119th number of Psalm. To the would that you would bag up with me to verse 85, and we will conclude at verse 88. '85 says, the proud have digged pits for me, which are not after thy law. All thy commandments are faithful. They persecute me wrongfully. Help thou me. They had almost consumed me upon earth, but I forsook not thy precepts. Quicken me after thy loving kindness. So shall I keep the testimonies of thy mouth. for the time that is ours to share, I want to talk about what real testimonies sound like. What real testimonies sound like. We have been looking at the 119th number of Psalms. And I know sometimes when you continue to look at a thing, you can become so familiar that it becomes hard to see any new revelation. And we've been here for a while. We've looked at this thing for a long time. If I be honest with you, I reached that point where I couldn't see anything else. It just seemed like he kept on repeating the same thing over and over. I'm hurt because of them, help me. I didn't do what they did, I obeyed you. Be faithful to your word and those who obey your word, but inflict your judgment on those who are not obedient. That's what I keep on hearing is help me and get them. So I struggled. I said, I know that I'm not that intelligent. I know I'm not that omniscient. I know I don't know it all. I know that I'm not the brightest lamp in the room. There's got to be some more here in this text. Show it to me, Lord. Y'all can sleep if you want to. I've been here for a while, so I'm going to be here for a little while longer. I love this text because the psalmist, while he seems to be repeating himself, you better listen to him. I'm only telling you my life's testimony, and sometimes life ain't nothing but a rerun. Sometimes what I've been through is what I'm going through. Sometimes I thought I had conquered. Sometimes I thought I had overcame. But I woke up this morning to face the same thing. This is what a real testimony look like. This psalmist, he tells us, he says, in verse 87, where we should pick up this week, he says to us, they had almost consumed me upon earth. They is why I read verses 85. Because I wanted to know exactly who the they was he was talking about. If you read verse 85, it says the proud. And if you remember, I explained to you who the proud is in this stanza of this song. The proud are people who hold positions. The proud are people who make decisions on others' behalf that others have to comply with. The proud in the text would be to us in our time or day, would be the senators, the governors. It would be those who pass legislation. It would be the judges. It would be the president and his administration. It would be those who are in leadership positions, those who hold the corporate positions, those CEOs and those people who can mess up but don't get fired. You know, them people. Those people who are at the top of the food chain. The proud, he says. He identifies them. And listen at what he says about them. He says, they dug pits for me And the way they operate is not according to your law, it's according to their law. To what they have added to make things go good for them, but hard for you. He says, this is who I'm talking about. He says, they, listen to him, almost consumed me up on earth. I only got 2 points. The first one being, not quite. Write that down. Not quite. This may help. The psalmist said, they almost. That's what it's saying. They had almost consumed me upon earth. Not quite. Y'all get me? I want to take my time right here. Almost ain't enough, y'all. Almost just about. Come here, grandmama. They liked them. Huh? Not quite. One of the problems for me as the interpreter of this text is that I need to be able to know who the author is so I can identify what problem he is going through so that I don't misuse what he wrote. But the problem for me with Psalms 119 is that the author is anonymous. Some scholars have really studied this thing to look and find who it is they can give authorship to. And all of them seem to always zero back around to David. But along with those, they also consider Ezra and Daniel as authors of some of these stanzas at least. And I looked at it, I said, well, as long as I stay within the confines of the text, I can look at just about any of these 3 guys and pull from their life something that will bring from the text, not quite. Daniel, come here. Daniel was from Judah. And in the 6th chapter of Daniel, God left it on record that Daniel, because of his character, steadfastness, and faithfulness to his God, was able to be promoted to the upper echelons of King Nebuchadnezzar's administration. He wasn't the only one who was being promoted. There were Persians being promoted. There were people from notable territories, people who were once enemies, but who became friends under King Nebuchadnezzar. But what they could not swallow was how this little slave boy from Judah is getting promoted higher than we are. They all had high positions, governors and presidents over their territory, and yet they were irritated by one man's promotion to the point to where they plotted against him. They knew that this old guy who has been promoted by the name of Daniel, he was faithful to pray 3 times and he didn't hide. He was faithful to make sure he opened up the window and faced the area, the direction that the scriptures told him to face when praying or seeking the throne of God. And so he continued to pray. Now, they looked at what he did and said, now, we won't find anything against him unless we find it against him and his God. Watch the text. Because they put together a pit. They dug a pit for Daniel. They put a trap for Daniel. They went to King Nebuchadnezzar and said, why don't you put a decree in place for the next 30 days that no one can petition their God for anything. Nobody but only you can be petitioned. Knowing that Daniel faithfully prayed 3 times a day. So the king liked what he heard. And he put it into law. The Bible tells us in the 6th chapter of Daniel that they went and spied on him because they knew he was going to do what he'd been doing. They knew he would be faithful. I see something in the text. They knew he wouldn't forsake the precepts of his God. So they went spied on him and they caught him being faithful. They went and told Nebuchadnezzar it hurt him because he realized he had been tricked. But he had to hold up to what he said. They put Daniel in the den. The trap worked. The pit, he fell into it. They put Daniel in the den. The king lost sleep all that night. Came back the next morning. Daniel, have your God saved you? No, that ain't what happened in the text. It wasn't quiet. Daniel answered back. He said, yes, O king, live forever. My God has shut up the mouth of the lie. Hold on, y'all missing it. In other words, the trap almost worked. The pit almost got me. But I got a testimony. Not quite. Y'all sleep. See, y'all ain't been through enough yet. The people you love ain't put you in the box yet. You ain't been through enough hell and high water to be able to shout with the psalmist and say they almost. That almost worked. I give it to you, try it. You put forth your best foot. And it hurt. I got dirty, but not quite. That's what a testimony really sounds like. Isaiah, help me. Isaiah 54:17 says, no weapon that is, you hear that? It's formed against you shall prosper. Every lying tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. Do you know what heritage is? This is the way we work. This is how we operate. No matter the ditch, no matter the trap, I won't forsake the precept. Because the precepts keep me in the place of not quite. My testimony. Psalmist's testimony. He said, not quite. Look at Jacob. He loved Rachel. He worked a long time for that woman. Rachel daddy treated Jacob like Jacob needed to be treated. Tricked him. Well, one day, Jacob had worked what he said he would work. He was working for his father-in-law, Laban. And there was some dispute about some animals they was breeding. Jacob went along with what the Lord advised him to do. Let Laban do all the choosing, but the ones he kept for himself, God favored his work. Jacob worked for his wives. He worked and his work paid off. And his father-in-law, for whom he worked, did not receive the favor that Jacob did. And Jacob finished his work. Jacob woke up one morning, set off, said, I'm done. I done worked it off. He went on, headed on his way with his wives, Laban's daughters. Got 400 and something miles away. Laban, spirit gets stirred up. And he chases after Jacob. For 400 and something miles, he's chasing after Jacob. The Bible tells us he finally sees him on the horizon. And he lays down to go to sleep. And the Lord visits Laban in his dream and says, don't you say a word to Jacob. Don't say good or bad to him. What I'm trying to get you to see is that the not quite is really God saying, I draw a line for how bad they can go for you. There's a line in the sand where they cannot cross. Not quite. I got some testimony. I can give it to you from the street, how they tried to take my life, but not quite. I got some testimonies of how I was faithful to the church and still felt like I was done wrong, but not quite. Real testimonies have within them almost, but not quite. The psalmist goes on, though. He goes on. Listen, it's quiet. Maybe I got to ask y'all a question. Sometimes when it's quiet, you got to ask some people some stuff. The psalmist says they almost consumed him. I got a question for you. Why is it that your spiritual enemy has not quite consumed you? Huh? Can you answer? Why you ain't over with? Why you have not thrown in the towel? Why haven't you tapped out? Why didn't they play and work on you? I believe Jesus' conversation with Peter will help us. He had to tell Peter, Satan seeks to have you so he can sift you as wheat. Jesus said, but, I like a but. But I have prayed for you. And then listen what he say, that you will be strengthened. Let me go on to the next part because we right here. Verse 88. It says, quicken me after thy loving kindness. So shall I keep the testimony of thy mouth. This is what testimonies really sound like. He just said, I'm an overcomer. I'm a victor. Hip, hip, hooray, I made it. You know what he said? They almost got me, but they didn't get me. I made it. But a real testimony don't end always right there. Immediately he said, quicken me. Huh? Let me tell you why. If we look at Daniel, what got him in trouble was he didn't forsake the precepts. But how many know that obedience to his precepts has the ability to leave you strengthless? Let me say it another way. Obedience to him sometimes drains you. The psalmist said, they almost got me, but I kept your precept. I didn't forsake it. I'm weak, quicken me. Let me help you understand what quicken is. Quicken is to bring to life, to revive. And what I see the psalmist saying is, I didn't forsake your word. I know your law. I know your word and I kept it. I know your law. But now I'm not asking for law. I'm asking for life. Talk to me. That after I have obeyed, after I have expended all of my energy in obeying what you have told me to do, I need you to remember I need life. Quicken me. The psalmist quickly, hurriedly, speedily runs to, after his shout, not quite. That reminds me of children of Israel. Remember, I always like to tell you how when they went through the Red Sea and God closed up Pharaoh and his army, that they began to shout about how God had redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. And then they began to complain because they were thirsty. Following the Lord will exhaust you. The psalmist says, don't let that worry you, though. The same Lord you were following is the same Lord that will quicken. Say, give me strength. Quicken me. When God spoke to Abram in the Ur of Chaldees, told him to go to a land, I'll show you. God knew all about the stars in the sky. He knew all about the galaxies. But he didn't talk to Abram about that. When he talked to Moses about going to get the children of Israel from Pharaoh, he knew all about space technology. But he didn't talk to him about that. What I want you to see is that this same God who has spoken to us in this book is the same God that spoke to Abram, spoke to Moses, told them what they needed to know to get the job done. Because here is the reality. Knowing or even acknowledging does not guarantee obedience. We back. Just because you know the word don't mean you obey it. Just because you acknowledge that he is the creator of everything doesn't mean that you obey him. And here is the dilemma, is that such is the strength of human will, satanic and self-deception, that even when we are heartfelt and have a deep desire to do God's will, we often do not possess the strength to. So the psalmist says, check the record. I need strength. I've expended it all going through what I just went through. I obeyed your word, and now I am weak. So he says, quicken me. Even though I know everything you say is right, even though I know everything you say is good and true, even though I know your will is perfect, and even though I say yes to it all, even though I really want to be obedient to you, I don't have the strength. See, I lost y'all because y'all got fake testimony. But this is what a real testimony sounds like. Yes, he got me out of that, and I'm weak. I need some more strength to make it through the next. I'm about to get out of here. Lord, I thank you for the honesty of the psalmist. To not just show us that you can be protected by his word while you're going through. Not just that you can be delivered by his word from what you're going through, but that by his word you can be strengthened after you have went through all of that. See, we ought to be able to appreciate this because we've just been through so much. We don't eat. I know we empty. I know we empty because I have my days where I won't eat. And it's my job to stay in the text. So I know those of you who clock in from 9 to 5, taking care of loved ones, really have not made the time to fuel up from the word once you are weak. But I'm here to tell you that according to the psalmist's testimony, according to my life's experience, is that when God does work with you through something, you become weak. And it is okay to tell the Lord, give me more strength. Why is it that sometimes we spring with joy to do the duty of the Lord, while at other times it takes the funeral home to crank some life up in us? We scarcely put forth a foot of life. Sometimes this is the case. But may I draw a conclusion here? That if this is where we find ourselves on the teeter-tot of weakness and strength, but having the desire to do so, that we may be leaning on what I call self-confidence. See, self-confidence paralyzes our spiritual energy. If I can see where it's coming from, I'm all right. If I know who's going to give it to me, I can sleep all right. But see, self-confidence does nothing but paralyze your spiritual energy, because spirituality says, even though I don't know, even though I can't tell you, Even though I can't write out a detailed plan of how God gonna work it out, the spiritual energy that I need comes from the Word. Don't be self-dependent. I told you I had 2 points. Second point is, I just need quickening. That's all. I'm sorry I gave it to you out of order. I already preached the second point. I need quickening. I had my not quite. I had my shouts. I had my 9 out of 9. Now I'm drained. Lord, quicken me. Now watch this. I'm about to leave you. He says, so shall I keep the testimony of thy mouth. He says, I gave you my record, that I kept it. Now let me give you a reason to act on my behalf so that I can keep it. You see him? He says, my record is that they set traps, they dig pits, that they almost consume me. That's the record, but I did not forsake your precepts. But now he says, quicken me, so shall I keep the testimony of thy mouth. He's saying now, my record is that, but my reason is this. That's what a real testimony sounds like. I believe we call Jesus to the stand to give his testimony. He would concur that people in positions to make rules had set traps for him, had dig pits for him. They took him from judgment hall to judgment hall. It started out as just communal talk, communal hating, silent whispers, corner talk, pillow talk. But then it escalated to where they put him from judgment hall to judgment hall, and from a magistrate and magistrate. It went from small talk to big talk. They found him guilty, but found him innocent. They put him on a cross as a penalty for their inconclusive findings. Crucified him. They put him in a borrowed tomb because his life was gone. His spirit had left his body. Check the pulse, there was none. Check the heartbeat, there was none. Check the breathing, there was none. He was dead. They didn't believe it, so they pierced him in the side, to check. And they said he was dead. Took him off that cross, put him in Joseph's tomb. 3 days later, God raised him from the dead. Jesus' testimony is that they formed their weapons. Their tongues lied on me. But their own tongue has caused them to be in judgment. That weapon did not prosper because God raised him on the 3rd day. You see, the whole resurrection story is, not quite. You thought you shut the king's mouth. No, not quite. He rose. He rose, and the Bible says it wasn't a secret that he showed himself to Cephas, to some of the other disciples, to Mary, to Martha, to over 500 men. In fact, you can take a flight today over there and check the tomb of Joseph. He's not there. You see, they killed him and put him in a place that, hey, listen, I've done funeral after funeral for the last 2 months. We can go check the grave, they still there. But if you check Joseph Burrell's tomb, he's not there. What you saying? Not quite. Why? Because God quickened him, gave him life, resurrected him. Now he sits at the right hand, making intercession for you and for I, as we live these testimonies of not quite. Ooh, I need quickening. The door of God's house is open. You can come by way of letter. You can come as a candidate for baptism. You can come on your own Christian experience. You can come by DM, email, text message. You can tell your friend.